Welcome back to the channel, folks. This is Jason, certified financial planner and host of Fighting Words Financial. And today, let's talk a little bit about China's electric vehicle market. That market is booming, folks, and everyone is jumping on the bandwagon. In fact, something like 80,000 new energy vehicle related companies were registered last year in China. That brings the total to somewhere north of 321,000 new energy vehicle related companies out there in China. And the government is starting to get concerned. And that, my friends, is actually probably a good thing for you. Now, I'm not one of those guys that says government interference is always a great thing. But in this case, that is something that is probably a good thing for you if you're invested in NIO, Xpeng, BYD, or Li Auto. And I think by the end of the video, you're going to see why. So folks, if you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, check out my Patreon if you get a chance. It's a small group of people, but it's a great group of people, some of the smartest investors around who are willing to share knowledge and insights with each other in a rational and helpful manner, and I think that's very important. So, back to NIO, Xpeng, BYD, all of our favorite EV companies. So while that regulatory crackdown that's going on right now in China with technology companies is sort of driving this slow motion mini apocalypse in all of our favorite Chinese stocks and seems to be hammering away at a lot of our favorite Chinese picks, for those of us that have been invested in NIO, Xpeng, and Li Auto, this is actually kind of old news for us. Those stocks declined all on their own without any help from regulatory bodies at all. So look, guys, I'm a long-term thinker and a long-term investor. So of course I view this more as a consolidation period before another explosive rise in price, as technological and manufacturing fundamentals catch up once again with the pretty lofty expectations for these companies. So when this is going to happen is anyone's guess, and I'm not willing to make a prediction at this time. But here's a prediction that I am willing to make, and I think that by the end of this video, you'll probably agree with me. I think that the regulatory crackdown is going to benefit established EV company brands like BYD, Li Auto, NIO, Xpeng, and perhaps a few others that are well known in China but not so well known outside of China. So if you guys have been following my coverage of NIO and Xpeng since the very, very beginning, in particular, I've been really cautious about predicting how much of the market share either company was going to win in the Chinese market. At that time, when I started covering them in 2020, there were already 130 different native auto brands being sold in China, meaning 130 different Chinese brands being sold in China, along with every other car maker in the world who also wants to sell in China because it's the largest market on the planet. The company that sells the most cars in China is actually Volkswagen at 14% market share. And every single car manufacturer that's Chinese in China actually has a single-digit market share, which I don't think that regulatory bodies or the CCP really see as a positive thing. The phrase you're looking for here is destructive competition. The Chinese market is far more diverse than folks who've never been to China, or even folks who never leave their particular corner of China can ever imagine. It's a vast country with a population, their middle class is basically just as large as the entire population of the United States. You're looking at close to 1.2 billion people, 4 times the people in the United States. They have vast variation in regional tastes, in rivalries and loyalties regionally that spill over into consumer choices. The government, however, and the people in charge of setting economic policy are worried about a repeat of what has happened with different emerging industries in China in the past. That is to say, the government is worried about a race to the bottom that's fueled almost entirely by price cutting. This is going to be bad for the entire sector, since some of those companies are going to be really well-funded companies with very bad products who are happy to keep throwing good money after bad in terms of advertising and cost cutting just to bury the competition. So the companies that have the best products are not necessarily the ones that are going to come out on top. That is exactly what we saw happen with many other industries in the past in China. It's what we saw happen with the American auto industry. So this type of scenario will have extremely negative consequences in terms of product quality and reputation abroad for Chinese manufactured cars. In a lot of ways, this is precisely what happened with China's internal combustion vehicle ambitions. There was a race to the bottom that ultimately ended up with most Chinese auto companies, in order to just pay their bills, becoming primarily contract parts manufacturers for Western auto companies, while their own vehicle lines suffered from quality control issues and from a lack of innovation, since most of the money they were making for the company was being made as a contract part manufacturer. No one in charge of China's economy right now wants that to happen. As both a matter of prestige and as a matter of good business sense, China wants to do what they call the new energy vehicle market differently. New energy vehicles refers to a general category consisting of pure electric vehicles, hybrid power vehicles, and possibly alternatively fueled vehicles like hydrogen fuel cell cars. So China is, like I said, the world's largest market for automobiles. Everyone wants a piece of it. Roughly 20 million vehicles per year are being sold there. And that number is only growing, folks. And the government has a very, very ambitious goal of 20% of vehicles being sold in China being new energy vehicles by the year 2025. That's not very far off, folks. Regulators recently indicated that they think that the state of this new energy vehicle industry, though, is kind of in trouble. They think that there's too many companies and that the companies are too small and too scattered and too weak. So even before now, China has tried to limit the number of companies doing business in the new energy vehicle business in China. Back in 2017, they limited manufacturing licenses and permits for new companies, and it's very difficult to get that manufacturing license now. It's a very long process. So they were likely already concerned back then of a buildup of overcapacity, there being too many brands in China, where some of the best Chinese EV makers with the best products weren't going to be able to compete in a market with more established players because they were going to be drowned out in terms of production by these bigger companies. Or maybe they were even concerned that each of these little mini new energy vehicle companies, like these little mini companies, were just going to parasitically steal sales from quality brands like NIO, Xpeng, Li Auto, and BYD, and make it difficult for even these bigger companies to compete against more global brands. And let's be honest, NIO and Xpeng and Li Auto are still really tiny compared to even BYD, compared to Tesla, compared to GM, compared to Volkswagen, Mercedes, or whoever else wants to sell in China. So this isn't a new phenomenon. This is something that has happened before in the Chinese market across many sectors and leads to that race to the bottom where companies compete solely on price. If China wants to build a strong brand and a strong export market for their cars abroad, they have to have a great reputation. Their new energy vehicle businesses need to be larger and capable of grabbing a larger slice of the domestic pie first, larger than any of their internal combustion engine manufacturers have done in the past. China's top electric car makers like NIO, Xpeng, Li Auto, and even the Warren Buffett-backed BYD are going to benefit from what I think is a planned consolidation in the industry. In fact, long term, I don't think that investors in the big four Chinese NEV makers are going to be negatively affected at all. Once again, this is in the long term. I don't think they're going to be negatively affected at all by this consolidation, but you can't really predict what a panicked herd is going to do in the short term. And in the short term, I think the threat of consolidation is going to provide you some opportunities to get into NIO, Xpeng, Li Auto, and BYD at really good prices. Because like I said, that panicked herd is very, very hard to predict. That doesn't mean that these companies that are going to get consolidated are small or insignificant companies, at least not all of them. There are 130 different Chinese car brands being sold right now in China. How many of those Chinese brands can you name off the top of your head? Many of these companies have valuations in the tens of billions of dollars. These are not tiny companies. No, I think it's going to be enormously beneficial for the stocks we already own, NIO, Xpeng, Li Auto, BYD, maybe even Geely and a few others. Provided that don't get unlisted, of course, but that's a whole new video. In the long run, I think it's going to eliminate a vast horde of vampire-like potential competitors for BYD, NIO, Xpeng, and Li Auto, companies that have no chance of grabbing a large market share, but can steal tiny bits of market share from these four big players. So I think that that's only going to benefit those guys, and it's still going to keep the market competitive out there. There's still going to be enough there to drive innovation. And perhaps more importantly, it's going to allow BYD, NIO, Xpeng, Li Auto, and maybe a couple of other companies to snap up new technologies and new capabilities that are going to enhance their products, and they're going to be able to do it at a discount. All right, folks, that is just my opinion on what I think about the regulatory environment in China right now. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments below. I do love hearing from you guys. Have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.